Hi everyone. Just a reminder, these aren't professional videos. It's just me sharing with you. This afternoon I want to show you it's a little book that I make. It's awesome to put samples in, just to display some of your work in, or even just to give as gifts. I've made, I cannot tell you how many over the years. I actually only have 2 left because I keep giving them away. Right. You take a piece of card, and this is what you do. You fold it in edge to edge lengthways. Okay, not too accurately done, but anyway, lengthways, and it needs to be accurately done, otherwise it doesn't sit well. So that's what you do. You fold it lengthways. You then open it out. Please don't try and do multiple folding because it actually makes the whole thing very inaccurate. So it's one fold at a time. Now you fold it in half the other way. Now you cannot do the fold like that. That's what I mean. You have to open the whole story out and fold this one to the middle, to the center fold, and fold it again, and the same on the other side. You take your edge, oops, and fold it to the center. So now you've divided it into 8. Right? Let me just recap again. Fold it in half this way, open it out, fold it in half that way, open it out, fold this edge to the center and that edge to the center. Accurately, accurately, accurately. Right. What I do sometimes use is a hero marker just to help me to, really get, especially on cardboard. It's very, you have to really get a good edge. I would use that to make my edge as sharp as possible. Now, you can either go with, if you used an A4 size, you would end up with a little book that size, right? If you, this thing was about 51 by 77 centimeters. I think it's probably A1. It's card that you buy. Oh, and what I either use it as card. One of my books is just the card that I've done paint techniques on, and sometimes I will glue a piece of 100% cotton or whatever on the back if I want to use fabric paints. So you can either go with a set size of paper or fabric, is what I mean. Alternatively, you can work out the size you want it to be. Right. So I made this one a few days ago. These embroidered little pictures that I showed you that I was doing for my hand stitching on paper, I put them down onto my ruler. That's actually a very useful technique to remember. You're very unlikely to make a book with bigger pages than that. So whatever it is that you want to put, say this was what I wanted to put in here, I would put it down on my ruler, and I would work out that possibly it needs to be 6 inches wide and 8 inches long. 8 inches high, my book, and 6 inches wide. Right. How do I calculate how big my paper must be? Each page, we said, needs to be 6 inches wide. That one, that one, that one, and that one. Each of those pages would have to be 6 inches wide. So that gives you your measurement there. You need a piece of paper or fabric or whatever, 24 inches wide. Now, I said 8 inches high for the book. So that would be 8 inches for that page, and it would 8 inches for that one, because remember you're going to fold in half. So that would make that width 16. right? Pages, you take the width of your page, required page, times 4, and the height you want the book to be times 2, and that gives you your measurement. So actually in this case, it was this little book, my pages were 4.5 by 4.5 and 9 inches high. So in the end, I had to cut a square, 18 inches by 18 inches. Right, so that's that. We'll get back to that just now. Don't know why I got rid of the paper. Now, you folded it into 8. What you do next is, where your first intersection is in the center there, and the next intersection from the other edge. So 1 block away, 1 block away, you're left with 2 in the center, right? You are going to cut that open with a pair of scissors. Now, this is what you do. You take it and you fold it in half lengthwise. You fold it so that you've got this little peephole thing through there, and you just keep, and there's your book. Now, when you do that, I don't know why, never sussed out why, I've never bothered to try and suss out why, but you can see when I do it that way, it doesn't fit all that well. When you take it the other way, it's a much flatter little book, and that is as easy as that. Now, what I did in this case, in the case of this little book, I used my favorite new fabric, which is this very thick violin that I've got. Like I said before, it's not even that it's that thick. It's just very closely woven, and it's just awesome stuff. And I've done it on here, and because it is what it is, I've actually drawn my lines on with a white pencil. And obviously then I would also cut between the two. If you want to try this, I would cut between my 2 points. I've also got some red violin. I don't know where the heck I got it, but so obviously they do come in colors, right? So again, fold it lengthwise, create your peephole, and then start folding. Now, as you can see, because it hasn't got folds in it before, I then take it to my ironing board and I very carefully iron that bit together, and I'll take the next. I probably will go back to there and get my points all lined up first, get that together and iron it, and then iron those 2 pages, and I end up with this little book, which is just it's a different shape. Can't remember what measurements I went with, but you can see it's a different shape, right? The other thing that I need to remember to tell you, I mostly just use them as is. You end up with 6 pages. You end up with a double page, a double page, and a double page, and I've still got to embroider the squares for there. If you wanted more, I guess you could have extra folds, maybe, but they would have to be even numbered. You'd have to go, we've got 4 folds at the moment going across your book. You'd have to go either 6 or 8. It might, depending what you use, make this part of the book too bulky, and it will bulge a bit. Bulging books don't bother me because it tells me that there's something interesting inside, but it does bother some people. But what you could possibly do is make 2 or 3 sets, little books like this, the same size. And okay, now I'm not just japping here and putting, and if you put them on top of each other, you could do a stitch one on that side, put one on the other side and stitch it, and you'd end up, I guess, with a whole lot more pages. But then obviously then you make a cover. Now the cover, like this particular one, I am going to make a cover, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my book, and I'm going to take some of this violin again, and cut a piece the right size, put that on top, the right size of the cover. I would actually cut it a bit bigger than my pages, I think, and I would stitch by machine or by hand. If you did by hand, you would do like a figure of eight story, and you could just tie it, or you could stitch it through by machine. I might just, before I double this up, put a little bit of reinforcing fabric in between the two layers, just to make the whole thing stronger. And anyway, you could end up then with a book with covers, and you would actually have more pages, because you could count this side and that side as a page, and you'd end up with 8 pages, I guess. Yeah. So that's one possibility. The other one is to make, I found this awesome little folder. I don't know where the heck I got it. Must have had something in, oh, you know what? I do remember what this was. It was a notebook. It was glued to there. There's the glue mark. And it's got this very sort of pretty Chinese fabric cover. I'm going to make a book to fit into this cover. And then I could stitch it through. You see, you have to suss each one out. I could stitch it through, but alternatively, I guess I could glue it. I'd have to think about that one. But there. So you can go make a cover of your own, or go with a cover you already have. Now, once you get to this stage, what I do on mine, I either, I usually just stitch with, I think I've got about, I think at least 6 strands of embroidery thread. And these ones, this one here, I've got, actually got like, it's a wool and an embroidery, and 2 embroidery strands. And funny enough, I've used almost the same, and that wasn't intentional. They were made years apart. Obviously, I like that. Anyway, and then I just stitch, you know, over and over and over and over. Now, where my thread runs out, I leave a tail. I start the next one, and I do a couple of stitches, and then I just tie off those ones and snip them off, and leave this little, it makes it more interesting. I leave this little thing on there. There's one clearly to be seen. So every time you run out of thread, leave a little tail. When you start, leave a little tail, stitch a few stitches, and just knot the two together and snip it off, right? What I also do, sorry, I didn't plan any of this, as you can see. If I decide, this one doesn't have one, if I decide to make these page divider kind of things, I will I do these on the machine. I just turn a whole lot of like this was wool and that sorry waist silk, and I just put it under my machine on a zigzag and just zigzag it along, and I twist it as I go along to keep it together. And I just put various things together. There's some organza ribbon, then there's just one of those novelty wools, a thread of some sort, and I'll just put together whatever I like, and I will stitch a loop into the top of my spine there, and push that through and knot it, and it just also adds a little bit of something to the book, right? What else can I tell you? This book was just the plain card that I painted with gesso. Oh, I must give you my homemade gesso recipe. I'll try and remember to do that. So it's gesso, and then I've used paint sticks and I've just rubbed. And but I mean, if you don't have paint sticks, you could use your normal wax crayons as well. I'm sure that'll be fine. So that was a little stamp. I've had this stamp, these little stamps since the 60s when I first started teaching. So then I just do all sorts of things. Now these are not stitched on here. I've actually stitched them and then glued them in place. But having said that, I didn't tell you that. Before you put your pages together in whatever way you're going to, if you want to stitch into your book, you need to keep it open and you need to mark your pages. So let's close our little book again. That's how the little book would be, right? So on here you would write cover, and then you'll have 1, and then I put an arrow showing where the top is, but actually the top always goes towards the center fold anyway. And then that would be 2, that would be 3, and that would be 4, and then the next one would be back cover, and then it would be 5, 6, 7, 8. So when you open it out, you will actually see that your cover is not where you expect it to be. This is not your cover, and that's not page 1. Cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, I was talking nonsense. You see, I put back cover in the wrong place. That would be 4, 5, 6, and that would be back cover. You see how important it is to mark it, because you can so easily make a mistake. So the top of your page is always where the long fold is, if that makes sense. But you fold your book. You can even, like I say, make yourself a little paper template if you like. Otherwise, I mark on the inside of my pages. I will, if I do it on my book, I obviously don't want to write on the front of my book, so I would write here I would write, so cover, I would write in the cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and carry on and do it like that. What else? Oh yes, and then if I wanted to, obviously if I need to stitch, I'm going to stitch on here. And if I'm not going to stitch out, and I'm going to glue, I put the whole book together and then glue. If I stitch first and then put the book together, in other words. If you're not using anything like a violin, I actually glue my pages together just with wood glue. Works very well. What else must I remember to tell you? Oh yes, these pages on these books, obviously they're very thick. It's that thick cardboard, and when you fold it, I mean, there's no way you can get a normal sewing needle through it. So I use my stiletto, and I just go along and I punch the holes out. In fact, go all along and punch the holes in it, and then it makes it so easy to stitch. Right, so I make a stiletto, holes with the stiletto. This one had the calico on, and then I can paint on it, or just this one I just gave it an overall very watery kind of paint effect thing. I told you about how to measure, and these are just glued in. Told you how to calculate the size. Oh, on the inside pages of these ones, I don't think I would do that on any I used cardboard on, because I think the edges would go ugly quite quickly. I don't know. Maybe I'm just OCD about it. But on the violin ones, I'm quite happy to, on the inside pages, to do a running stitch all the way around, and only do the overstitch on the outer sort of the cover. Oh, one more thing. If you want to join pages like I suggested, like maybe book 3 books, 1, 2, 3. I would do, I think it's called a 10 stitch, where you start and you start with a straight stitch, then you go across and you do a straight stitch and another straight. You don't just come out, you don't just stitch on and on and on and on and on. In between, you do a straight stitch. So you would come out, out, straight stitch, carry on, through, straight stitch, carry on. I think the good embroiderers can correct me. I think it's called a 10 stitch. And they make the most awesome little books. Please give it a go. Thank you.